All right, so I am again recording so that Jamie, who couldn't be with us, will be able to benefit from what you can share with her. So which of the three groups would like to go first? Up, this group's going first. All right, so this is the orientation. If you lay your picture so that it's like that, then up will be up and side will be side.
That'd be nice, well.
There we go. And it's tricky to get it lined up because the thing works opposite of the way you think it should. There we go.
This is a good one.
90 years at the center of design.
Good one. It's a lot of shapes.
Yeah.
I think that's.
Okay, good. Nice one.
I love the color. I already told my part.
All right.
Okay,
What can you say about it?
Since I always talk.
Alright, so I was just wanting to talk about the shape using the principles, but it's kind of an interesting because at the chair that's like really close, you've got more horizontal shapes, which is indicating stability. You've got the two horizontal, and then on the seat of the chair you actually have like 5 horizontal, and then on the chair that's further away, it's the same chair, but because of the perspective, you see the curves more, and the more horizontal lines are obscured. And then in the corner, you've got the round shapes to make it seem warmer with the color scheme as well. And it just also has a nice kind of the continuity, like you're looking from the back, and then it floats.
Okay. And it's interesting, again, that Gestalt principle of continuation. The arm and the seat portion of the near chair are guiding you back to see the far chair. And it's almost like you can't help but go into the picture because of the effect that those forms are having upon you. All right, what else?
On the positioning, center of attention is the middle, or if you're using the rule of thirds, the edge of that's like the arm of the chair, and the top left you have the sort of eye-looking figures, something on the top half. It's supposed to be more safe, so it gives the appearance of that, but it has a lighter color than as opposed to the others toward the bottom where it's more black and darker. And then the bottom, you have the legs of the chairs. Bottom half supposed to be more grounded, so you have that. It's basically your positioning.
Okay. And there's a lot of vertical going on. So the bottoms of both chairs, you got multiple vertical things, which was sort of excitement rather than the big horizontal, which is stability. So to some degree, it's probably, you know, I mean, just without even knowing what was in it, if I just kind of look at it and look back, it's visually exciting. But part of that excitement is coming from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 verticals at different spaces in the picture plane. All right.
Okay, and for my part, the if you look at the reds, the red, the black and the blue, it's all like a combination. It's all coming together, and it looks like an abstract painting, but in art history itself, it would be a contemporary painting, because it's more modern. And then the oranges bring complements to the black, and the blue. And then let me see. The red, as he spoke before, the red looks like the fire and the blood, and the color is just so pretty. And that's about it.
Okay. I like it. Anybody have any questions or additional comments on it? Okay. It's not the kind of stuff I would have in my house, but that's because I'm not rich enough to buy that stuff. But I think it's a very interesting composition, and I think it, surely it would be hard to go past it and not sort of recognize that there's some interesting dynamic stuff going on. All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
Who's going next? Okay.
both of us guys have got some feelings about this.
Okay.
Okay, so like what's obvious first is that there's a lot of smooth and flat surfaces. So it makes you feel pretty calm, like the table, the chair is very smooth, it's leather, this is smooth. And although the room itself might be kind of harsh on its own because it's like all stone, the colors, this is green and blue, and this is all green and blue, you can't see, and then seeing outside are calming as well. And then the shapes, we couldn't really decide on what the center of the picture was, whether it was the coffee table or this, because you've got these shapes pointing, but either way, both of them are in the light, so they're centered in the lighter color, makes you feel safer. And we thought though, it looks like inviting and calm now, because there's a lot of light, but if this room was in the dark, it would be kind of scary because there's so much open.
Yeah, and we were saying that if there's different shapes, like if these weren't circle, if they were triangle, it might have been a little bit more intimidating. And that that's like a light over here, so pretty much we were talking about how the dynamic really would change if it was dark, just because the stone would be colder. And we feel like a colder room. We were also saying, like, sorry, if the colors were different, like if they were red and like these were black and red, it would be scarier too, and it wouldn't be as inviting. So I think that whoever made this image did a good job taking the cold stone room and kind of calming it down.
Using the form, elements of form to, make it and more inviting where it really wouldn't be.
Okay, and one of the things I find interesting is you've got what's a rectangle, it looks like just a blank white canvas over on the right-hand wall, and then you have this rectangular seat or bench, and those things, they balanced them out with the circular rug and the circular table, and then seemingly circular sitting things over there further in the picture. So it seems like they made a very conscious effort to balance out the rectangularity and right angularity of it with a circular rug and a circular table. And I think that sort of, it softens the room. All right, any comments, any questions? All right, thank you.
Sure. Oh, thanks, I practiced.
Okay, so ours is kind of weird, because we were both talking about it and we asked each other, okay, like what emotion does it get from you? And I got nothing. Like emotionally wise, passing by it, I actually passed by it several times. We had to like pick something, and then I finally like actually looked at it and was like, oh, this serves like a purpose as far as like the shapes and stuff, and we'll discuss that.
Yeah, so what kind of drew our attention is like you can see there's a lot of like contrast in color. Like you have like the white background, and even like the women are in white, but then you have this like big, I guess I thought it was a chair, but this like big chair, like round sculpture, and it's big and it's also red, which is like an eye-catching like bright color. I mean, it's kind of talked how it's kind of like with the rule of thirds with the center. It's not directly in the center, but it's catches your eye. And then like once you move past that, then you can see that they are females like in the back as well. Like the first time you see, you may not like, they're not like the first thing that you see, but then once you like pay more attention to the painting or picture, photograph.
Yeah. There's also like no use of harsh corners in it. Everything's very curvaceous, and that serves a purpose because apparently the designer felt very strongly about women's rights and against the prejudice of men, and it's like in that right there, it says it. So we're guessing that's why everything's very curvy to represent women and like their femininity.
Like how they're standing too, like it's very like powerful like stance, you know.
Right, because they form a little triangle with their legs and everything. And even like the use of like a rock, whoever was the picture, whoever did the picture for this, shows like a mountainside that's very jagged but everything's very curvy and like smooth. Even like the broken piece up there, it's still forming like a curve of a C, and it goes along with like the edge of the river, like flowing. So nothing's too harsh. Even the fact that that's red, when we first looked at it, we were like, oh, it's the mother from Little Red Riding Hood. So that's how we felt.
What is that weird thing? I mean,
I think it's a chair.
it's just messed up.
Okay, Donna, why do you think it's messed up? Assume it's a chair, it's like a big beanbag chair, you go sit in it. What, you're having a strong emotional reaction
I
against
just
it?
don't like the bumps.
Okay, all
I
right.
mean, it's so ugly.
Well, is
Just
it?
like a big blob.
Well, we were kind of thinking like abstract about it, since like
You're gonna
we read like this blurb that kind of talks about how like men have like been prejudiced towards women and all this other stuff. So we just kind of figured, we thought it was like a curvaceous chair, if a chair can be curvy, but you know, it's round. And we said maybe it could be, if you really want to look at it like abstractly, can kind of symbolize like a female's like body.
Right.
And
It could be a fist.
A fist?
Yeah, I mean, you could ball it up and make it a fist, maybe. You know.
comfortable and
It's
bullfighter,
a
and I think that's why they also did red.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
So,
an ugly picture. It
so,
really
so
is.
Donna's having a strong negative response to this somewhat humanoid
It's
form.
just ugly.
And the idea, like you go sit in that big red female humanoid form, she doesn't like it, and you think it sounds inviting and comfy.
I don't know how that can be inviting.
Yeah. Well, to me, it looks like it's comfortable, because there's no sharp edges, so it looks like, you know, you're gonna sit in that, and it's probably gonna give, it's probably nice foam, and the fabric, to me, looks like it might be like velour or something.
Yeah.
So, now again, that's not gonna go with any of the furniture in my house, but the idea, like, if I was in a place where that was, I would want to sit in it, I would try to sit in it,
Right, you would try,
yeah.
but you might not succeed.
Yeah.
Because look at that little thing right there. I mean, it is just so ugly. I'm talking about the bottom part, how,
like this,
no, go up a little,
this,
go up.
more.
Well, if you could, well, you can't really, well.
Because I think that how the angle is too, like I think, have you ever
So
seen
ugly.
those like chairs that you can like sit into that they put like the pillow on it?
Oh,
Like those
yeah, I
circular
have seen it.
chairs. So I think that's kind of how it is, like it's just by the angle, but I think it's like equal, so like if you sat in it, you'd be kind of like posed up.
Oh,
I think it
really?
looks like a woman sitting cross-legged.
Okay.
It's like, here's one leg, here's the other,
Yeah.
like folding under. You sit in the middle.
Okay.
I wouldn't wanna sit in that. I'm sorry.
Well, it has a mini me over here if you sit on that.
Yeah.
That's a chair too?
I don't know, but there's a sword stab through it, so we're taking it that that's mankind over
Mm.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
like
there. Those are males.
Yeah,
I won't talk about those two that are up on the top. Those little balls.
uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah, That's the woman's for.
Most ugly picture.
All right, any other questions or comments?
I'm sorry.
Okay, thanks. All right, so there, last week we had intro to color theory. This was sort of the intro to theory of form. And they're probably the two most dominant cues we have for seeing stuff. Let's see, we've got, where is it? Visual literacy, I think it was in 4 visual cues. So the 4 visual cues are color, form, depth, and movement. So we've got color, we've got form. We have, to some degree, we also have movement here. We've got, certainly got depth in this one, and movement in that this Gestalt principle of continuation is moving our eye into the deeper into the picture plane. All right, now we're going to start with the introduction to semiotics. So I've got a little PowerPoint here for you. And so, a couple people expressed a sort of resistance to the idea that visual versus verbal is a useful theoretical approach to understanding visual communication. And I'd say it's useful in a couple ways, including the fact that it's unavoidable. Communication by humans is largely verbal, whether it's spoken or written. And then we've got the visual aspect of it. That's an important part too, and it has become increasingly important in our lifetime, in part because of digital technologies. Once upon a time, if someone wrote a book and they wanted to have pictures in it, that would be rather difficult, and they would often be sort of in an appendix. You'd have these kind of pictures attached. And since the 1980s, anybody with a word processor has the ability to have some words and put some pictures into it. And so we've got an incredible increase in our ability to make pictorial our otherwise verbal communications. So, study of signs and symbols. Now this is actually from the Sochi Olympics, which were in 2014, and there's a collection of icons for the different winter sports. Now, has anybody tuned into any recent news about the Sochi Olympics? Okay, there was a big thing on 60 Minutes and PBS, etc. One of the things with the Olympics is they do drug testing, and you gotta make sure that the athletes aren't taking steroids or some other performance-enhancing drugs. Well, apparently, multiple Russian gold medal winners in 2014 were totally on performance-enhancing drugs, and the Russian authorities, who were supposed to be watching to make sure they weren't using drugs, were in on helping them use drugs.
Oh, come
So
on.
it turns out, I added a slide to this presentation because there should be an icon for this. These are the tamper-proof urine bottles, and apparently the Russian authorities figured out how to tamper them. So here's an athlete who's totally on steroids and produces some urine, and then they take it over here and they take that urine out, put some clean urine in, and then put it through to testing. So there was widespread violation of the sort of principles of fair sport last year. But what I wanted to do is point out, let's see if I can, I don't know how to do it in here, but in any event, in the notes pages view for this PowerPoint, it says image source, and it says www.sportsfeatures.com, press point images, etc. So that is my practice of how do I give credit for the images that I'm borrowing them. You find them in the note pages of the PowerPoint, and you would be able to download the PowerPoint and see that, right? And the same with this Russian insiders say state-run doping fueled Olympic gold. So, semiotics, which is called semiology by some people. The word comes from the same place as semaphore. Semaphore is a system of signals. So if you've got one person on this mountain and another person a mile away on another mountain, if you've got these flags, each flag has two parts, a red part and a yellow part. You've got this symbol, this system of 8 different positions, and what you can do, it's like sending Morse code. So Morse code is sent over an electronic thing and you get dot, 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 dash, dash, dash of letters. Well, this, you have the letters of the alphabet and numbers, and it's a way for people to see what the other person, you know, the message the other person is giving them. So it's been used for centuries on ships in the Navy. So you're going to send a signal to somebody before they had radio communication, etc. So that's where we get the word semiotics, comes from seme in Greek, means sign. These are the 2 founding theorists of semiotics. This guy's, it looks like Charles Sanders Peirce. Actually, he pronounced his name Peirce. So that's Charles Sanders Peirce and Ferdinand de Saussure. And these are 2 guys that are contemporaries. They're living about the same time from slightly different regions. And they were developing at about the same time their theories of symbols and signs. Ferdinand de Saussure is, I believe he's Swiss. He's probably French speaking, but I think he's Swiss. Charles Sanders Peirce is an American. And they are living, and they born in the 19th century. Both of them, I believe, make it into the 20th century. And they developed this semiotics. Now, semiotics is related to linguistics. And then, what is linguistics? Has anybody ever taken a course in linguistics? You have?
Yeah.
Where'd you take that course?
Here.
And what was it like?
Well, I actually did, for, what credit is that? I did, not the psychology of, but of like linguistics, the argument for linguistics and language.
Okay.
So it was all about like, there's an actual equation to forming
arguments using language.
Okay.
So that was really interesting.
All right. So linguistics it's a social science, and some people would say, you know, it's a pretty real science. When people study language in an English department, they're studying literature. That's not a science, it's a humanity. And so linguistics is a little more scientific because it turns out there are these laws of language. There are laws of how things sound. There are laws of how you put words together in a meaningful sentence. And linguistics is a modern, probably beginning of the 20th century, approach to studying language. Before linguistics, there was something called philology. Philology is the study of language found in written texts. So going back hundreds, maybe thousands of years, people look at a written text, they look at the Iliad, and they look at the Odyssey, and they read these things, and they say, this is what we can say about language. They look at the Bible, and this part is the Psalms. These are poems, and this part is a tale about war, and then this part is an origin myth. So they look at these written texts, and they make claims about language from written text. And the claims are reasonable enough, but it turns out what you should be looking at if you're going to study language is not written text, but spoken discourse. Because written texts are already sort of removed from natural language.
Mm-hmm.
They're already radically artificial. The alphabet that we use to communicate in writing is radically artificial, whereas speaking is totally natural. So the development of linguistics arises once they realize we should not be looking at written texts to make claims about principles of language. We've got to be listening to what people say, and we can write that down, but we have to go from oral communication in order to get real understanding of language and how it works. So, in the early 20th century, Swiss linguist Ferdinand de Saussure identified spoken language as the appropriate object of study. And this is the big breakthrough. When they get away from looking at the Bible, or looking at the Iliad and Odyssey, or looking at Shakespeare and saying, this is what we can tell you about language from these written texts. No, you listen to a guy who's selling fish in a fish market, and you listen to his accent and the way he talks, and then you listen to a woman who is basically working in a cobbler's shop in a different part of England, and how does her language different? That's what you look at. You don't look at written versions of it because they're already artificial. The spoken language is the natural language. Okay. All right? And so there are numerous branches of linguistics, 3 of which comprise semiotics. So these are all the parts of linguistics. So you could be looking at phonetics, you could be looking at semantics. The ones with the asterisk, semantics, pragmatics, and syntactics. Those are the 3 that make up semiotics. Grammar, phonology, morphology, psycholinguistics, neurolinguistics, language acquisition, sociolinguistics, discourse analysis, historical linguistics, and stylistics. They're all parts of linguistics, but they're not parts of semiotics, okay? So semantics is the part of language that has to do with meaning. So when I say, the sun's rays meet, okay? What do I mean? In the sentence, the sun's rays meet, what does it mean?
Together they converge.
So you think I'm talking about a celestial phenomenon where the rays of the suns meet. What if I'm talking about the 2 kids who are the son of the butcher and they raise hogs? The sun's rays meet, okay? So it turns out meaning is, you know, those 2 are spelled differently. But when I say the sun's rays meet, you're thinking it's this thing, and instead it's a couple of guys over here raising cattle, right? So the study of meaning is semantics, and that's one part of linguistics. Pragmatics is the branch of linguistics dealing with language in use and its context in which it is used. So the idea that you go into a restaurant and a server comes over and asks to take your order. They're sort of interacting with you, and their job is to say, what do you want? And your job is to tell them what you want, and you take that information and you go over, and it gets into the kitchen, and eventually you get what you want. So sort of the everyday, practical way that language is used and the context in which it's used is pragmatics, right? And then syntactics is the arrangements of words and phrases to create well-formed sentences in a language. So, what is the rule for stacking adjectives in English? So let's say you're a native speaker and you would say 3 big old red houses. A non-native speaker might say 3 old houses big red. So it turns out there's a rule for stacking of adjectives. You know it, even though you don't know what the rule is. You know it because you're a native speaker. So it turns out there's a rule. So the first thing is the number, and then the size, and then some other characteristic, and then the color. So there is a rule for how adjectives stack up in front of a noun in English. And even though it was never taught to you, because you're a native speaker, you know the rule. So your language is filled with rules. English is what's called a SVO language. It goes subject, verb, object. He kicked the cat. Okay? German is an SOV language. He, the cat, kicked. So each language has an order that is normal for that language. And English and German, even though they're very closely related, have fundamentally different structures in terms of where the verb goes. All right? There's 2 in there that are rather similar, phonetics and phonology. Phonetics deals with the production of speech by humans, often without prior knowledge of the language being spoken. So the whole idea that I've got to sound like a and it and fa and ma and ka and ba, that's about phonetics. Phonology is about patterns of sounds, especially different patterns of sounds in different languages, or within each language, different patterns of sound in different positions in words. So, how many vowels in a row can you have in English? How many vowels can you have before you need, no, how many consonants in a row can you have before you need a vowel? Think of a word. So like you've got, so you've got a consonant and a vowel. Can you think of one where you've got 2 consonants in a row before you get a vowel? Should, okay? So both of these are consonants. Can you think of one where you get 3 consonants in a row?
School.
What is that? School? School is actually, school is spelled S-C-H, but the sound is S-K. So you really only got 2 consonant sounds in a row before you get a vowel. Through? Okay. Through. Okay, that one again is good, except for the fact that this TH is really a single sound, th, the th sound, right? So it turns out you can have 3 consonants in a row in English. They're pretty rare, and they often come from Greek, something like sclerosis, okay? Sk, k, l, 3 different consonants stacked up. And beyond that, you can't get it. You can't get 4 consonant sounds in a row in English before you get to a vowel. In some other languages, you can. You can have, more than that. So each individual language has its rules of consonant stacking. And they've got their rules for adjective stacking. So that's what phonology is about, all right? But let's get back to semiotics. There are 3 branches of semiotics. The branch of linguistic and logic concerned with meaning, the branch of linguistics dealing with language in use and the context in which it is used, syntactics, the arrangements of words and phrases to create well-formed sentences in a language. So you probably heard some people, maybe a teacher say, oh, and these people don't know their grammar. Well, it turns out you know your grammar you've known your grammar since about the age of 6, and your grammar and the grammar of some rapper, maybe 50 Cent, right, are nearly identical. Your usage might be different. He could use different slang, but the actual basic grammar is nearly identical, and both of you have known it fully since about the age of 6, right? So, these three things are what make up semiotics. Now, Ferdinand de Saussure, and again, the source for this picture is in the notes pages, came up with what is called the dyadic model of signs. So we've got a two-sided linguistic sign composed of the signifier, the sound of the word dog, and the signified, the four-legged animal of the genus Canis. So this is what, I've given the dog a tail. I've given it a nose too. All right, so this is the signified, the thing that I'm talking about when I say dog. And this is how dog is spelled in English, but if we were to spell it phonetically, it would be kind of like dog, right? So one is the signifier. This is the signifier, the thing that does the pointing. And this is the signified, the thing that is pointed to. And every word has both of those. So whether it's a concrete noun like dog, or an abstract thing like hope, or a possible imaginary thing like a unicorn, right? You've got the signifier, unicorn, that thing that you're hearing me say, and if I spelled it out, you'd see it, U-N-I-C-O-R-N. And then there's the thing that is signified, which is this mythological animal, kind of like a horse, but it's got this one horn sticking out of its head, right? And so for Saussure, both the signifier and the signified were purely psychological. Subsequent interpretations have been more materialistic, focusing on the physical sound and the actual dog. So for Saussure, it's all psychological. There's the thing that happens in your head when you hear dog, or what happens at the back of your eye when you see it written. And then there's your concept of dog, your idea, and all of this is psychological. Subsequent people said, no, let's get more materialistic and let's talk about the material dog and the material sound wave that comes through the air into your ear, dog, or the light waves that bounce off the DOG on the board into your eye, okay? But in either case, for Saussure, there's two parts to every sign. And every sign is arbitrary. So linguistic form is arbitrary, and therefore that all languages function in a similar fashion. A language is arbitrary because there is no objective relationship between the sign, for example, the letters that make up the word cat, and the thing that it refers to, the actual cat. Meaning emerges from the word cat, not because of any objective link between these letters and the animal they're indicating. Rather, meaning emerges from the word cat by comparison, contrasting it to other words such as car and mat. Okay? So, now we've got this word cat. And now we've got, I'll do a cat face just. And whiskers. Okay? Totally arbitrary. This, in English, this could be milk, could mean one of those little furry animals. Or tree could mean it. There's nothing inherent about this animal that wants us to call it cat. Cat is meaningful only compared to mat, or car, or any number of other words that are similar but different. So the only way cat means cat is because it doesn't mean car and it doesn't mean mat. It doesn't mean fat, it doesn't mean cat. It's only by comparison to the other, you've got this whole smear of words. And it's absolutely arbitrary. This could have been, you know, house. And then house meant that only because it was different from the word mouse and different from the word louse. So it's all in relation to other words and totally arbitrary. When you think about, in English, We say horse. The French say cheval. I think the Germans say fair. They all mean horse. And it's totally arbitrary that in one country they say this to mean horse, and in another country they say that to mean horse. There's nothing inherent about a horse that causes it to have that name or that name or that name. And the only reason it makes sense is because in English, horse means horse because, let's see, because it's different from house, okay? Or it's different from, there aren't too many other words that are like horse. Morse, source, Norse, okay? It's not Norse. So horse is horse because it's not Norse and it's not house. That's what makes it be horse. Relationship difference from the adjacent words. So that's the sort of the crux of Saussurean linguistics. Now we get Charles Sanders Peirce, 1839, 1914. Let's see when Saussure was. 1857, 1913. So they died very close to each other. Saussure was a little bit younger. Peirce was a little older. Okay, his contemporaneous with Saussure was the American polymath. Polymath means this guy knew all kinds of stuff. Today, a university professor is an expert in maybe one thing, two things. Go over in the College of Business and there's somebody who's basically an expert in the statistics that have to do with production management. And that's what he's an expert in. And they talk about what a PhD is nowadays is you know more and more about less and less, okay? Peirce is a polymath. This is before people got so centralized. So he knew about language, he knew about math, he knew about music, he knew about literature, he knew about geology, he knew about geography, he knew about astronomy. He was one of the brilliant people who knew all kinds of stuff before you had to just know one thing if you were going to be a success in the academy. His theory of signs includes three roles: the sign, the sign's subject matter, the object, and the sign's meaning, its interpretant. So, Saussure has two things. And Peirce has three things. So Saussure has the signifier and the signified. Peirce has, like that, he's got the sign, which you'd call the signifier. He's got the object, which would be the signified. But then he has the sign's meaning, its interpretant, meaning that he has divided the way linguistics work three ways compared to Saussure's two ways, and then that has consequences for what you think about it. So he says, so Peirce says, nothing is a sign unless it is interpreted as a sign. So, you know, if I make sort of, you know, okay, you look at that and you say, okay, that's a peace sign. It's a peace sign because it's interpreted as a sign, right? But if I've got this one over here, let's say, you know, that's a sign. I didn't know sign. Unless you, as a member of this culture, would look at that and say, oh yeah, I know what that is. I know what it means. Unless there's an interpreter interpreting it, it's not a sign. Whereas for Saussure, he doesn't have that requirement. You've got the sign and you got the thing signified, and there is no need for a person doing any interpreting. So that's a critical difference between the two of them in terms of their approach to linguistics. All right, so then Peirce takes signs and he divides it three ways. And this becomes very useful to us when we're looking at a whole collection of signs, whether it's in an advertisement or whether it's in a store or whether you're in an airport, an international airport, and they're saying, we know we've got people from all different linguistic groups here, so we can't just put the stuff in English because people won't know where the bathroom is, all right? And so Peirce comes up with three different kinds of signs. In the symbolic, the signifier does not resemble the signified, but is fundamentally arbitrary. So there's nothing about this that resembles peace, okay? It's just, we came up with this, and we say this is a peace sign, and by agreement, we're all buying into it that that's a peace sign. As opposed to this one over here, okay? That looks kind of like a cross, and if you're a member of a Christian group, you say, okay, that has a meaning because it looks like a particular cross upon which a particular divinity was crucified. So this is more iconic. The signifier resembles or imitates the signified. And then when you go to, and you find, I'm going to put the first up here. You go and you see so this is the women's room, and this is the men's room. Because we have this common feature of women, many women wearing dresses or skirts, you look at the thing that looks more like someone wearing a skirt and you say, that is the icon that tells you that's the women's room, as opposed to the one not wearing a skirt, that's the icon for the men's room. And then index or indexical, the signifier is not arbitrary, but is directly connected in some way to the thing that's signified. And so we'll see some examples of that. But imagine you've got a thermometer, and this is 100 degree, 110, and this is 50, and this is 30. And somehow as the mercury goes up the thermometer, it's actually showing you this is freezing, and this is comfortable, and this is boiling hot. That the gradations are not arbitrary, but they're actually an index to what is actually being signified. So, here we've got symbolic. That is the on-off. It's not the same on all of them, but on a lot of devices. Okay, it is here on this Mac. The on-off button, it's got a circular thing with a thing up in it. There's nothing that tells me that's the on-off button. But I've seen enough of them, so I now know it's the on-off button. And because Mac sells its equipment around the world, and Windows sells its equipment around the world. Does your Windows machine have that on its on-off button?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yep. So basically, by agreement, but totally arbitrarily, this is the on-off button for computers, and has been for about, I want to say 30 years or so. I probably saw that as early as 1985. And then sometime before then, there wasn't that. I don't think my cell phone has. You know, my cell phone just has a button. They don't use that icon on the cell phone. But that is a symbol, and in order for you to know that that's the on-off symbol, you have to be a member of the culture that uses that and have learned it. These are icons, just like the ones from the Sochi Olympics. So this is Summer Olympics. There we've got, I want to say, running, biking, sailing, rowing, rowing in a kayaking, swimming, archery, weightlifting, horse gymnastics, volleyball, basketball, field hockey, soccer, water polo, boxing. I don't know what that one is. Fencing. I don't know what that one is either. And Olympic Village. So these were, I don't know what these Olympics were from, but I'm able to interpret all of them because they look like the things that they're representing. So those are icons, or iconic. The word icon and iconic has kind of come into our general discourse to mean just about anything in the world now. And so we talk about someone, you know, Madonna is iconic pop star, etc. But the sort of technical meaning of an icon from the point of visual communication is one of these things that if you look at it, you know what it means. You don't have to have learned what it means, or you don't have to be a member of the culture to know that it means that, okay? And then here's index, indexical. So you got a thermometer, here's your degree Celsius, there's your degree Fahrenheit, and right now, because the red thing is up there, it is about 78 degrees according to that thermometer, and you got an index, and it tells you that information. And then you know that 78 degrees is about 25 degrees Celsius. So it's not arbitrary. You didn't have to sort of guess what it meant, and it has a very specific meaning. And as the temperature goes up and down, it's giving you very specific information. Here are some less obvious indices. Smoke, okay? If you see smoke, it's an indicator that there is fire. Footprints. You're at the beach and you see footprints on the beach. It's an indicator that a person was there recently. Basically, if you have a temperature, if your temperature goes up, it's an indicator that you have some sickness. You got a fever, all right? And then there are indicator words, this, that, here, and there. So this, that's an index, I'm indicating. That, I'm indicating. Here, there, these are indicator words. So all these things are connected to each other as sort of visual cues, all right? Okay, so here you can see notes page view. This is where I put the information about the sources of my stuff. So this stuff is going to become very useful to you, particularly Peirce's three-way of is it a symbol, is it an icon, or is it an index, are going to become three very useful vocabulary items for you to make sense of a lot of things, including brands, okay? And one of the things we're going to look as we look at logos, we're going to see the evolution of a brand. Here was the Starbucks brand back in the 70s, and it had this picture and these words. And then it had this picture and different words. And then it had this picture, and then it just had this picture and no words. What we are seeing is a movement from the presence of words that help explain the icon to, it's got to be self-explanatory without an icon. And using Peirce's vocabulary is going to help us talk about visual symbols, particularly brand images, copyright images, things like that, okay? Anybody have any questions about that? So that was a quick introduction. If you had a full course in linguistics, you'd have like, probably 13 weeks of basic linguistics before you get 13 weeks of semiotics. So this is a rather sort of rush job, but you're going to use this again. We're going to read what will be one of the more challenging readings, but I'm going to give you a lot of guidance before you get into reading it, where a French linguist is talking about an ad for some Italian food products, and he's going to talk about the image and the words and the relationship between the images and the words. Okay? All right, let me go back to here. And we've got module, and we've got meeting 3. Okay, so that's your semiotics. Readings for meeting 4. So you're going to have 2 readings for next class meeting. One is graphic communications sample chapter. So if you have had a course in graphic communications, this will be sort of like overly simplistic, but it'll be an easy refresher. If you haven't had a course in graphic communications, it's going to be nice, easy, concise thing that's going to give you all the information you want. And it's a free sample chapter from a textbook. And at the end are a collection of study questions. All right, so it's about 12, so it's 24 pages about design and layout. At the very end are these study questions, review questions. You got questions 1 through 20. So I'm going to give you a 10-question quiz from those 20 questions. So if you read the chapter and figure out the answers to those questions, you're going to get a great score on the quiz. And for some of you, this is unnecessary because you know this stuff inside and out. For others of you, if you haven't had a course in graphic design, then this is the first time you're exposed to it. It's pretty simple, because this textbook is actually a textbook that's used in high schools and community colleges. It covers everything about graphic design, and it's sort of print-centric. It's sort of before the web and the internet, etc. But the things that it talks about in terms of layout and design and typography are still relevant. I'm going to give you one more source for graphic design, and it comes from a woman by the name of Robin Williams. and it's the CRAP principles. Has anybody heard about the CRAP principles? Yes, what do they stand for?
I don't completely remember all that.
Donna, you remember, what are the CRAP principles? Come on, what's the first one? Okay, contrast, repetition,
Application.
arrangement.
Arrangement.
No,
Alignment.
alignment, that's
Oh,
it.
okay.
And proximity.
Okay.
So, the CRAP principles are sort of an easy approach to, you're gonna make a poster, you're gonna make a PowerPoint slide, you're gonna make the cover sheet for something. Basically, if you haven't got contrast, people aren't gonna see what you want them to see. If you haven't got repetition, there's a good chance that you have an opportunity for repetition, and we love repetition. We're gonna want these things lined up, okay? Alignment is something, everything should align with something else. You should never have just this space in which there's things hanging out there. It's aligned with this part of the title, or it's aligned with this part of the body, or it's aligned with this part of the picture, etc. Alignment, we want things aligned. And then proximity is going back almost to a Gestalt principle. You put things near each other, and then we think of them as a group. So putting things that belong together is a design principle that really works. So you'll read this article. For some of you, it's just you know all that stuff, but you'll have a quiz based on those 10 questions. Then
20 questions.
so there'll be 10 questions based on the 20 questions at the end of the chapter.
Oh.
And then we've got a reading from this sort of design writing research book. It's a magnificent book, and here's actually the chapter, and it's about McLuhan Fiore. So Marshall McLuhan is a very influential designer, and he and this guy Fiore, I can't remember Fiore's first name, came out with a book in 1968 called The Medium is the Massage. I've got a copy of the book and I'll bring it in. But what they're saying is that McLuhan and Fiore in 1968 broke all the rules that are still in that other one that are telling this is how you lay out things and arrange them. They're saying all those rules were fine for everyday stuff and they still apply for a lot of straight conventional business practices. But McLuhan and Fiore said, no, we're in the 60s now. Forget all that nonsense. We've got a whole new set of rules. And so one of the things is we'll look at the degree to which the groundbreaking McLuhan and Fiore versus the standard business as usual approach to design and layout is what is still evident in designs and layouts that you're seeing in your packets of images, okay? So, why don't you give me back, you can hold on to those pictures, keep any of them if you want, give me back the envelopes, because I'm gonna give you a new set of pictures for next week from the more recent one. So that was the design issue of the New York Times Style magazine. This is the travel issue. As a consequence, there's going to be different kinds of pictures, and a lot of them are going to be sort of exterior, and it will probably be more useful if we try and look at the environmental approach or the ecological approach to things. So all I need is your envelopes. You can keep the pictures or give me the back pictures, but I'm going to give you new pictures in the envelopes.
I didn't realize that you were keeping them in your class.
That's fine.
Sorry.
No problem. All right, thank you. Thank you. All right, so the reading homework is up there. You will have a quiz. I may give you a writing assignment. Let me think about that. If I'm going to give you a writing assignment, the writing assignment will be posted tomorrow before noon. The revised syllabus will let you know that my office hours then are 5:30 to 6 p.m. on the 2 days a week that we meet, and anytime you want by appointment, because I'm really flexible and I've got a lot of opportunities to come meet you, okay? Sound good? Yes?
For the social media posts, are they due just at the end of the week?
Well, basically, I looked through them earlier. A couple of you didn't have any yet.
Sorry.
A couple of you had them. I helped Donna start hers. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to help Donna lay hers out. One of the things about posting in that space, it's a web-based space, but it's not all that friendly, and I'm gonna show you how to first put in a table, and then you put the pictures in the table, and they'll lay out the way you want them.
Right.
But just, a couple of posts a week is gonna be good. Next week, we'll start off by looking at your posts and what you're saying. I post, what's that?
Are we supposed to put pictures in it?
You can if you want. You're really just supposed to be paying attention to your use of Instagram and Facebook or whatever you're looking at. I posted on Instagram, I'm a gardener, and I have a rhododendron bush, which is just glorious this week, right? So what I did was I took a picture of my rhododendron bush and I put it in Instagram. And then I'm thinking about some of the things some people were, I was like, Instagram is just about making people jealous, It's just all of it. Well, basically what I was probably trying to do is try to make anybody, and I probably have like 4 people who follow me on Instagram, I want them to be jealous as hell of my rhododendron, because it is the most beautiful rhododendron that you've ever seen, okay? So what you're supposed to be doing is keeping track of your use of these social media, and if you have the ability to get the pictures in there with these, go for it. We'll talk about those at the start of class next time.
But it's not due like immediately after class, it's just
No.
at the end?
Yep.
Okay,
Couple of weeks.
cool.
All right?
It comes like behind as soon as I come home.
Excellent. I look forward to seeing them. All right, thanks for coming. See you next time. And I will post, if you have a writing assignment based on the readings, I will post it before noon tomorrow.
Yeah, it's a page and it says Deandra.
Have you done?